Well, let's start right now on the Padres. Padres have had a very interesting offseason. The fans have been grumbling. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. But man, at the end of the day, they still got a pretty good ball club.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like last year. I mean, I think it's more grumbling this year, but remember last year going in spring training, they had traded Juan Soto, and there was a little bit of a, oh, geez, attitude around town. They're not going to be as good. They were better last year than they were 2 years ago. Um, and that's what I think you can get lost when you get caught up in the how many big names did we sign this winter? I mean, Padre fans, and I know most of them will tell you they've gotten spoiled after years of being lost in the desert under previous ownerships. But they've got spoiled. Hey, we got Manny Machado this offseason, or we signed Xander Bogaerts this offseason. We traded for you, Darvish. It's not always, as you know, coaching baseball, about the big names. Quite often, it's the other guys that are going to determine how good your season is. That is if you have a good core in place, which obviously the Padres do, even without some of their old guys. I mean, and it's too bad Joe Musgrove is out for the year, but Dylan Cease, Michael King, Yu Darvish, they're still the makings of pretty good rotation. Luis Arise, Tatis, Machado, makings of a pretty good lineup. What I think is going to be about this year, and I'm not as down on the Padres as a lot of people around town that are like, they didn't do anything. To your point, they're still a really good team. Last year, Jurickson Profar really helped carry them in the first half of the year. That's, to me, what it's going to take. As I mentioned, you got Machado, and you know what he's going to do. You know what Tatis is going to do. They lost Profar this year, but nobody a year ago expected him to have the first half he did. Now's the time for somebody here to step up and have a really good kind of a surprise season, whether it's, whoever, take your pick, Connor, Joe, or whomever. But it's going to be the periphery players who I think, if you have a few of them step up and have a good season, all of a sudden you've got something really exciting.
Tell me your thoughts on Jason Heyward. When he came up as a young player with Atlanta, I think a lot of people, maybe after the first year or two, kind of got turned off because he had like his own hitting coach, and there were some grumblings in the Atlanta organization. Is this guy coachable or not? But boy, he has certainly stood the test of time. And really, you talk to people that have been around him, have been teammates of him, or managers that have managed him. This guy actually is a heck of a guy.
Yeah, he is. He's a great teammate, a great leader. And, there's no doubt that, I think, he's not the player he once was. His bat's a little slower. The Dodgers loved him last 2 years, when they had him. They ended up finally releasing him in August after the trade deadline because they made some other moves, guys that were just going to be more productive players. So, I think in a platoon situation, Heyward can still have his moments. I think in the clubhouse, he's going to have a lot of moments. Go back to the 2016 World Series when the Cubs beat Cleveland. Remember Game 7? The Cubs had the lead, blew it, rain delay. Rains came after the 9th inning, and then the Cubs won it in the 10th. The Cubs knew they almost blew it, and it was threatening to get away from them. They had a players-only meeting in a side room in the Cleveland Visitors Clubhouse during the rain delay in the 9th inning. Now, you don't see many players-only meetings during games, and you certainly don't in the middle of game, 7 of the World Series, 7th game. Jason Heyward's the guy that called that meeting. He gathered the Cubs. He gathered them into the team. They had guys like Anthony Rizzo and David Ross and Chris Bryant, but it was Heyward that gathered them all together in a side room and fired everybody up. Said, "Look, we're not going to blow this. We gave up the lead. This is in our hands." And Heyward really stood tall in that moment. And as I say, that's one moment of his career but the Dodgers loved his leadership. He was part of that good winning culture the Dodgers had. So, hopefully there's something left on the field and he can, help on the field and then use some of this other stuff off the field to help the team, the Padres, maybe be better than people expect.
Give me your thoughts on the signing a week or so ago of Nick Pivetta. It became official last Saturday.
Yeah, I like it. The thing with Pivetta, I mean, obviously the Padres were going to, they needed another starting pitcher. We all knew that. And, it took a while, but I think they landed on a pretty good guy. I know his ERA over the past few years, coach, has been high. It's been, over 4 the past few years. But, what I do like is, this guy, he threw 142 and 2/3 innings last year, 26 starts, 142 the year before, 179 innings back in 2022. I don't know if Padres are going to get 179 innings out of him this year, but he's a guy that takes the ball and wants to stay in games. And if he could throw even 150 innings, I like that he has the potential to be an innings eater. Like I say, I don't know if he still will, but if one of two things I think is going to happen with Pivetta. He's either going to, be a workhorse, eat a lot of innings, which would be great. If he doesn't go quite as many innings as some people hope, he has the veteran presence where I still think he's going to help the rotation. And, it's all about depth as well. As you don't go through a season with 5 starting pitchers. I mean, you're going to have some injuries. You need not just some of the young pitchers the Padres have, lined up as potential starters. The Estradas and the Marijones, those guys, but you need the veterans, and they have a good veteran core with Cease, and I mentioned Darvish and Michael King. You can throw in the category now, and Pivetta, really gives them a good, solid, I think, experienced rotation.
And I think their bullpen, you mentioned Estrada. I think Estrada
Right.
obviously set a major league record, striking out 13 hitters in a row last year.
Yeah.
Really, I know he had a little time with the Cubs, but, got a lot of great experience last year. There have been some rumors about moving Robert Suarez, who's due 10 million. He's got an option for each of the next 2 years at 8 million that I'm sure he would option out of if he had another great year like he did a year ago. But the Padres have, I think, the bullpen to where if those starters can, give them any kind of length whatsoever, the Padres ought to be in pretty good shape in the late innings.
Yeah, they should. And I'll add one more thing on Robert Suarez, coach. I know there's some trade rumors going on around him. And I'll say this, I'm not advocating for him to be traded. I mean, when he's on, obviously he's really solid, but almost as a warning shot, I would say to Padres fans, I don't think it's the end of the world if they trade Robert Suarez. And the reason being, yeah, you love his talent. You want to keep him. But as AJ Preller moves pieces around and works with the payroll within the parameters of his payroll, if they do have to make a move, bullpen relievers are the most volatile part of your team year after year after year. And we've seen it so many times, a guy that has a reliever that has a really good year one year, oftentimes falls off the next year because he was overpitched or he threw too many innings or he was in a groove and the next year he's not. And a lot of relievers can become inconsistent. And also, it's volatile because, guys that maybe have been afterthoughts, all of a sudden you give them a chance in the bullpen. And historically, it shows up time after time after time. A guy that was an afterthought last year, all of a sudden gets an opportunity this year and he stands up and you can find good bullpen help with those kind of guys. So again, not advocating to trade Suarez, but I think I'd rather see him traded than Dylan Cease if the Padres have to make a payroll related move.